This podcast is brought to you by Trivelo Coaching, where we help triathletes and cyclists like you train smarter to race faster. I'm your host, Jordan Donnelly, and on my left is former Australian Ironman Champion and head coach of Trivelo Coaching, Gerard Donnelly. Today on the podcast, we are very excited to bring another very special, unbelievably insightful guest. We had such a great chat to this person, and we are continuously surprised by the quality chats that we get to have on this podcast. And again, this was no exception. Today on the podcast, we have elite professional runner, Dave McNeill. Dave McNeill is a professional runner from Melbourne, Australia. He is a dual Olympian, competing in the 10,000 metres at both the London 2012 and Rio 2016 Olympics, with a best place of 16th in the 10,000 metre final at Rio, with a blistering time of 27:51. That's 27 minutes, 51 seconds for 10,000 metres, 10K. He holds a PB of 27:45 for the 10K, and recently ran a PB and Olympic qualifier in the 5,000 metres of 13:13. Again, an absolute blistering pace, which he's hoping will get him a spot on the team. And it seems a little bit cruel that you can run the Olympic qualifier and not be guaranteed a spot. So he is sitting, waiting to see if he will get picked, which he'll find out very soon. But regardless, we got to chat to Dave today, and what a great chat it was, Dad.
Yeah, it's something about runners that I just love talking to. They've got a really measured, down-to-earth, non-ego type of approach to their sport, and we could learn a lot from these. And look, listening to Steve Monaghetti a few months ago, and Dave McNeill was no exception. And his modesty, the guy's, he's won the Zatopek twice. He's won Australian Champion titles. He's been a runner, and I used to watch him as a young schoolboy growing up at the local APS cross country events and the APS track and field championships, which is quite a big thing in Victoria. And his career has been a long and successful one, and it's really fantastic to see him potentially go to his third Olympics. It's a credit to his longevity, his consistency, his approach to it, and the thought processes he has now, the freedom he has to run now as compared to the anxiety he says he has when he was a younger runner. And to be doing a PB, 10 years later from what he's done in 2010 is a testament to someone who's a real thinker about what he's doing, and some of the stuff he comes out with is just such good lessons that we can all take into our everyday sport, of course, but as well as into our lives. That you need a certain balance in what you're doing, and anything that's extreme is unsustainable, and he epitomizes that. And I just think it's one of the better conversations we've had for the people who are out there really trying to everybody's competitive and wanting to better themselves, and it's not going to happen every single session. It's not going to happen every single race, and you have to be at peace with yourself about that, and that comes across loud and clear with the way he goes about everything he does with his chosen sport, which is track and field.
As always, we couldn't get enough. We wanted to hold him on the podcast like we do with every guest. We just want to squeeze as much information out of them as possible. So we hope you enjoy this chat. Without further ado, here is the episode with Dave McNeill. All right, we've got Dave McNeill on the line. Dave, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Do you want to start by telling the listeners whereabouts in the world you are at the moment?
Yeah. Well, I am not in Melbourne. I'm very fortunate to be on the other side of the world. I'm in St. Moritz, which is in Switzerland. It's a, relatively higher altitude location, pretty popular with skiers during the winter. I'm just in an apartment and on the balcony at the moment. So it would be rude not to show you the view that I've got at the moment. So
it's unbelievable,
absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky. And actually, I'll try and get it around the corner. You can see the track there as well. Nice. So
yeah,
we did a big track session yesterday and bit of a long run this morning. So it's a very fantastic place to train and undescribably picturesque.
Yeah, we'll get into why you're there in a little bit, and we've got some questions about some pretty epic results you've had recently and probably why you're in Europe at the moment. But we always like to ask our guests off the bat, what does their sport mean to them? So what does running mean to you, Dave?
Yeah, loaded question.
Start with a bang.
Look, probably for the last few years, I've always described it as a pretty intimate part of my identity. It obviously is something that I've been fortunate to do competitively, but I'd be running even if I wasn't competing, and it's a pursued activity, hobby, whatever you want to call it, that I get a lot of joy out of. I make sense of out of a lot of things through running, and at the end of the day, I'm happy when I'm running. I'm happy after I've run, and so I always kind of describe it as something that brings out the best in me, and it certainly contributes to I guess what I put out into the world, whether that's running competitively or working or doing podcasts with you guys.
It's interesting. We were fortunate enough to interview Steve Monaghetti not long ago, and his answer was very similar. And it's that passion we hear in your voice about you would do this regardless of how successful you were at it. And that's a fair point to make, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I try not to take for granted that I have opportunities to be in places like St. Moritz at the moment, which is, as I said, it's videos and pictures and words don't really do it justice. But there's just something so very special about running through these mountains and along all these bodies of water, and it's as I said, indescribably beautiful. And I think we're here obviously to train and reap the benefits of some altitude. But as I said, I'd be running even if I wasn't doing it competitively. But if I wasn't doing it competitively, I might not get opportunities to be in places like this, which make it all the more special and joyous. So definitely fortunate to be able to still be doing this competitively. Into my older years compared to everyone else that I'm here with at the moment. I've got 10 years on most of my training partners.
That's fantastic, and they're all probably looking to you for the calm, cool, older statesman level-headedness. I imagine.
Well, they may be looking. I'm not sure if they'll find it. I think you're better off looking at someone like Stewie McSwain or Matt Ramsden. They're Stewie is certainly a picture of just laid back, easygoing, enjoying it all. And for me, I think it's been a bit of a journey to get to this point where I recognise and I'm a bit better at just kind of having figured out what works for me from a training and racing and headspace perspective. And it's even for me looking at people like Rambo and Stewie who the cream of the crop at the moment. They're Matt's only 23, I think, and Stewie's just turned 26, so both pretty young, but wisdom beyond their years. And then that's not even to mention stalwarts like Jen and Ryan Gregson and a lot of the other people we've got here. So I've got good role models, as much as maybe they look up to me as the older guy who's been doing it for a while.
And do you feed off each other a bit with motivation and professionalism, and the way you would notice little things, little intro-sync things that they're doing each day, preparation wise, getting up, food wise, stretching, all the 1%ers. Do you sort of, I should be doing that because he's doing that? You probably know these guys very well anyway, but
look, I mean, there's certainly a culture within the group that makes everything kind of self-sustaining. We obviously we're running together all the time, and when you're in environments like this where that's what we're here for, is to train and recover and all of that, and we're doing it all together. It's it just kind of comes naturally that you are, I guess, for lack of a better term, feeding off each other. But yeah, look, as I said, I think that's more a product of probably having spent a lot of time together, personalities having gelled together, pretty well. And the other thing is each week I guess one of the main days of our week is a Tuesday, when we're usually on the track or doing some sort of high quality session. And look, a lot of the times those sessions would be damn near impossible to do on your own. So I think that's one particular example, which probably speaks to lots of other examples, outside of that one session where you are almost relying on each other. It's not a matter of getting to these sessions and trying to be the best on ground. It's getting these sessions and getting to the end of it and surviving it. And the only way you do that is actually working together and sharing the pace. And I think that's a really good example, and it's been a good proving ground for particularly in this group of how we work together, and how outside of competition, there's no competition when we're in training. It's very, very much a team atmosphere, and as I said, us surviving a lot of this training and long times on the road, jumping from place to place, we rely on each other just to kind of provide a bit of that sort of camaraderie, and honestly just some lighthearted banter to keep everything pretty lighthearted and enjoyable. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, for those that don't know, you're all part of the coveted Melbourne Track Club, which has a high reputation. And from the outside, I mean, it looks like you all are very close and a tight-knit group. And the competitiveness that you're talking about, but also the teamwork has probably resulted in some amazing results over the last few years, but specifically 12 months. And let's talk about, the reason that you're all there in Switzerland, and it's in preparation for Tokyo. You've got people who are already qualified, and you yourself, we wanted to get to this main point, have just run an Olympic qualifier in the 5K a few weeks ago before heading to Europe. So firstly, a massive congratulations on that.
Congratulations, mate. That's an outstanding performance.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was great thrill. And
tell us about that race. So it was a race in Perth. You did it with Matt Ramsden. Talk us through the race and the lead up and everything that resulted in that epic result.
Okay, I'll probably jump back and forth between a few things, but probably sort of early April, made the decision to start working on a plan to go and race in Europe and chase some times and have a crack at Tokyo, I guess. So that was kind of the starting point for me, and was kind of deciding between going to the US or to Europe to try and chase some times. And the other guys were already going to Europe, and it just made sense to go over there with them and try and keep things as normal and consistent as they had been all year in Melbourne. And probably a couple of weeks before, just booking tickets overseas, Matt and Nick kind of came up with the idea of putting on a 5K in Perth before we left, which Matt had some success with over the last 12 months. He'd put on a good 1500 at the start of the year, where he ran the Olympic 1500 time, and had done a couple of pretty handy time trials last year over 3K and 5K. So it had proved itself as a good venue, reliable, set up with pacemakers and so forth. And then the icing on the cake was Stewie. Stewie put up his hand and said he'd pace us, which you can't get. You will get very few races ever in the world where you'll get a tow along 4K, let alone 1 or 2K. So that was exciting. And so I guess going into it, we'd all kind of raced a lot during the Australian summer, and I was really proud of kind of everything I'd done that season race wise. I'd run some a good 3K, but arguably hadn't competed really well at some other races, and kind of finished a bit further back. But having said that, I'd been really proud of how I'd run it and run a lot of those races, and just trying to kind of find a layer of aggressiveness and really working on, I guess, being a little bit more present and calm and collected going to these races and really backing myself. So I guess leading up to Perth, I'd for lack of a better term, I'd probably grown some balls, I think, and was really giving myself a shot at some of these races. And so going to Perth, I knew training had been going well and I was in good shape, and we were there for one purpose, which was at least to get someone across the line in an Olympic time. And honestly, on paper, Matt was looking like he should do it pretty comfortably. And so, we'd kind of arranged that, Stu would do the pace and he'd take us through probably pretty close to 8 minutes. And then we'd try and pick it up a little bit from there. And, for me going into it, I was hoping I'd finish somewhere around about my PB. If I finished under 13:20, I would have counted that as a really good result and would have taken that with some confidence going over to Europe. But felt really good through 3K. I talked a little bit about the months leading up and the races leading up, having very specifically worked on I guess my mental approach to getting to the start line, but also just how I attacked the race and where my mind was at the race. So, when I was I think all of the races leading up to Perth, I'd find myself in situations where I was at the front and pushing the pace and really having to be quite aggressive. And this was an opportunity where I didn't actually have to do that. I could just sit in and stay calm and collected and enjoy the ride. And then just, when it gets tough after 3K, which it usually does, just try and fight on. And fortunately felt really good at 3K.
What was your 3K split, Dave?
We're right on 8 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And you just run a 7:46, hadn't you? Previously.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, about a month and a bit before. So I remember after doing that 3K, I was like, man, I should be able to get through 3K over 5K in 8 minutes and feel super comfortable. And sure enough, I did, which was good. And then, probably another lap or two later, I started to notice that a bit of a gap was forming between Matt and Stewie, and I probably hesitated for 200 meters, but then just I don't know, you just have to kind of go on your gut, and I kind of bridged that gap and got in behind Stewie, and I was just feeling really good. And at this point, I wasn't really thinking about it at the time. I knew I was feeling good. I knew I was having a good race, but got to about a lap to go, and realised I was kind of a sniff at the qualifying time. So
which was 13:12.
Yeah, 13:5. Yeah. So, and I think I went through. I was about 12:16 or something, I think, at the bell, and So I kind of I didn't take off like the clappers. I took off with a bit of measured restraint, but picked it up a little bit, and then I just wanted to make sure I got to that home stretch and wasn't dying in the arse. And fortunately, I did, and crossed the line, and it was obviously very close, but managed to dip under. So it was definitely a bit of a shock, because I was hoping that a PB was inside, and that might have been 13:16 or 17 or something. So, but to get the time, right before it was actually going to Europe, which was kind of the purpose of the trip, I was like, wow, I mean, don't need to go overseas now. that thought lasted probably an hour or two, and then realized there was still a lot more work to do. So here I am.
What a great story that is. And you must have been pinching yourself to have Stuart McSwain, who's probably in the top 5K runners, top 10 5K runners in the world at the moment. To have him pace you, you must be pinching yourself to having him in front.
Yeah, look, and look, I think I guess you have to look at that particular race with a bit of perspective, and this is true all the time. And I've said this to a few different people, and my PB before that race was from 2012, so 9 years ago. And look, there've been plenty of times in the last 9 years where I've been in really good shape and certainly capable of running PBs, but the further into your career you get, and the faster your PBs get, the gains become increasingly marginal, and often the difference between running a PB and not is not necessarily your fitness. It's opportunity, it's timing, it's conditions, it's paces, and this was a case where all of those kind of stars aligned. We had good weather in Perth, exceptional pacemaking, and also it was a reasonably small race, so it didn't have the kind of the extra pressure of getting clipped and pushed and having to go around people and things like that. I mean, in many ways it was a glorified time trial, and I'm not afraid to admit that, and I know a lot of people will see it as that, and that's okay. But it was certainly very personal for me. I think in 2018, towards the end of 2018, I remember sitting down with Nick, and this was 6-9 months after the Commonwealth Games, and I'd had a pretty nasty injury there and had sat out for about 6 months of pretty much not running at all, and I decided then that all I really wanted to do for the rest of my career was try and get my PBs a little bit quicker. I wasn't too worried about if I made another team or went to another Olympics, but that's what I wanted to do, and so it had been a goal for a while to chase those PBs. I think stars certainly aligned on that day. Stars probably aligned with COVID and getting an extra year to basically have some uninterrupted training, and so I certainly benefited from basically a whole year of training last year, and not having to worry about getting up for races and tapering and things like that. So it's probably all contributed to where the fitness has been this year and that result.
I do want to ask you about that, the COVID year in a second, but I don't want to move on from this PB you've done without asking what was your feeling in that first hour after the race, the next 24 to 48 hours? Really interested to know, how good did it feel?
Yeah, I mean, I crossed the line, and you never quite know when you're that close, because the clock and when you actually cross the line and when it stops can always be a little bit off. And I crossed the line and I then didn't see the clock, so I kind of turned to the crowd who were on the track and asked, did I get it? And they said, yeah, you got it. And there was certainly an expletive that escaped my mouth, and I just kind of crumbled for a little bit, because one it was very personal. It was like I said, at that point Tokyo was not really on my mind. The only thing on my mind was that I wanted to just kind of test my limits and push myself and see if I could run faster than I'd ever done. So to actually do that, and certainly at this point in my career where the longer you're running, I always say it's probably something like 1 in 10 races where you actually step off the track and you're really satisfied. A lot of the time it's you're not completely satisfied, or it doesn't quite go your way, and so it was pretty special. I crumpled on the ground and just took a little moment for myself, and then it was just a lot of ecstasy for the next 24 hours. Not a lot of sleep, and a lot of messages and phone calls, and just sharing it with my little posse of close supporters.
And for those who don't know, Dave has been to 2 Olympics already. He's been to London and to Rio. And it's no guarantee that he's going to be selected for Tokyo, but he's put his hand up. He's qualified for the time, and that is a bit of a wait and see for selection, isn't it, Dave? And that's kind of a little bit nervous, I suppose. But what a fantastic palmares to be able to say that possibly you can go to 3 Olympics as a track runner, which there's not a lot of Australian runners. Is there anybody, Dave, who's done 3?
Yeah, three's certainly less common. But yeah, we've had I've had a few that have done. Monners, I'm pretty sure, did 4. Jeff Risley, who's from my area, he's on the verge of potentially going to a 4th one as well. But yeah, it's pretty special, and certainly be a great honour. And it's at this point, it's certainly for me, definitely the wait and see now. I won't be doing any more races before the qualifying window closes. Morgan McDonald and Matt Ramsden will both have another crack at a 5K. So, but yeah, I did another 5K over the weekend, which went, mostly pretty well. I ran my 2nd fastest time, so I've kind of at least shown that I'm, reasonably consistent this year. I've had three of my fastest times ever in the last 2 or 3 months. So hopefully that counts for something. At this point, it's out of my control. The only thing I can control now is staying healthy, keeping fit, and I guess I'm just training for Tokyo, whether or not it happens. Because I think the decision at this point whether you go and race again and try and put something else on the board. For me at this point, I'd much rather focus on getting to Tokyo in the shape and in a position to hopefully make a final, and rather than just kind of keep chasing and hoping to impress selectors. So we'll just wait and see what happens.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on, because this is June, and how many days is the Tokyo 5K race away?
Yeah, I looked it up yesterday. It's on a Tuesday. I think it's the first Tuesday of August. Yeah. So yeah, we're probably 6 or 7 weeks away, I think.
What's your thoughts on your form and holding form? And you've had how many weeks since that Perth event, was it? Yeah,
it was about it's probably about 5 weeks ago, maybe yesterday, 5 or 6 weeks ago. So yeah, it's I think probably one of the features of Melbourne Track Club training is that it throughout the year, whether we're in summer or winter, we always, 90% of what we do doesn't change all year round. So I think that's something that gives me and gives the team a lot of confidence, is that even though we've raced quite a lot this year, throughout that time I'm still doing 2 long runs a week. I'm still doing a threshold run every week. Track sessions change from week to week, but they're always pretty high volume. So we've kind of had all the ingredients there to kind of keep us going all year, and not to mention the fact that I had 12 months leading up to it of really just fortifying the body to be able to cope with a long season. But I'm feeling good, and I think like a lot of people was really relishing this little block that we're doing now in St. Moritz, just to focus on training and have a bit of an uninterrupted run now, because it's my training diary kind of looks like a bit of a zigzag with up and down weeks, which is just a natural feature of when you're racing every couple of weeks. So
that'll take the pressure off you, though, won't it? Knowing you don't have to actually race to qualify now, and you can concentrate on your actual training program. It's almost like you had a little mini peak to get the qualifier. You need to go back and train, and then hopefully it can peak again when it counts in August. Is that the plan that you've got?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the other good thing is that, whether I'm racing or not, or whether I get a long block of uninterrupted training or not, it really doesn't change. I'm not training any harder now. I'm not, I'm not putting in any extra miles now. I'm literally just doing what I've done all year. The only difference is, if we've got a race on, you might do just a 30-minute jog the day before to kind of freshen up and then your race day is usually a few less Ks, and then you might have a shorter run the day after. So just not having those sort of 3 or 4 day blocks where everything's a little bit down just allows you to kind of top up the engine a little bit. And so certainly some confidence to come from that, but also it's nice to just take the mental pressure off for a little bit and just enjoy training and enjoy running in some nicer rounds for a few weeks.
So that was going to be my next question with regards to your training block throughout the COVID year. We had a pretty interesting kind of experiment with all our athletes who are mostly age groupers, so definitely not elite or professional. But last year, because of all the COVID lockdowns, we had a lot of our athletes improve dramatically because they had completely uninterrupted training for the first time in their age group careers, because most people work or family gets in the way. But we had these athletes do 6 months of real winter training and come out absolutely firing. How did that kind of uninterrupted training period impact you and the team around you?
Yeah, I think the impact is probably a fewfold, or at least twofold. I mean, there's the obvious one, which is I always look at training as basically you gradually just kind of building layers of resilience to your body. So you can build layers of resilience either by you up your mileage, you up your intensity, you reduce your recoveries. You can do it a few different ways, but when it comes down to it, you're basically just increasing your body's tolerance to cope with work. And so, having long uninterrupted periods of that, really allows the body to adapt and not have to necessarily go through these up and down cycles. So there's definitely the physical component to it, but I think also probably, I think invariably whenever you have a goal or a race or something that you're working towards, there is invariably some mental anxiety that accompanies that. More stock gets put on in did the session go well or not, whereas last year really didn't matter whether the session went well or not. It really just mattered that you got the work done. So I think probably longer uninterrupted periods of kind of low pressure, low anxiety, probably lower stress, probably I think probably helps your body physically and mentally recovering, being able to absorb training. So I think it's probably a combination of factors that led to that. For me, I'd finished a physio degree in 2019, and I'd kind of set aside the first half of the year to focus on Tokyo, and was going to start work after that. And then COVID hit and plans changed, but jobs also dried up. So I didn't have much choice for a few months and was kind of on the sidelines looking for work. And so that kind of gave me an opportunity, one, to basically be a full-time athlete for an extra year that I may not have gotten. Also gave me a lot of time to, I guess, more critically think about what works and what doesn't, and I think bigger picture, just what's my purpose, what makes me happy, and at the end of the day, I think I know that's the most important ingredient in any success is you've got to enjoy it, because if you're not enjoying it, then that sort of stress and anxiety is higher. It's the motivation and the presence in your activity and being present in the activity isn't there. So having some time to kind of really critically think about that's been really good for me, and I think it's probably paid off a bit this year as well.
There's so much in those summaries you've given, and would you say it'd be fair to say that that experience really has helped set up this year's results? And over the journey you've been a runner, as you said before, everything's built on layers, and that was a really different year for everybody. And it's really quite amazing that after all these years, and you've said yourself, it took 9 years to do a PB, and it wasn't that.
Yeah.
Was that COVID year that enabled that to happen, in your opinion?
Oh, yeah. Look, it was certainly a huge part of it. I've never stopped sort of running over the last few years, but between 2017 and 19, I had a lot going on. I was studying full time, doing clinical placements full time, had a part-time job on the side as well. So I just had, I was kind of stretched pretty thin, and so going into 2020, things were going reasonably well. But if I look back on it, I'd say maybe my chances at making Tokyo, if it had been in 2020, would probably have been a bit slimmer, having not had, perhaps that really good foundation beforehand. So I think that's probably paid off pretty well for me this year. And I don't think I'm the only person that's worked for. But yeah.
Some key words you used there, which I really love, were presence and enjoyment. And that is so key for our athletes, because being non-professionals, being able to enjoy it is the most important thing. And having presence is really what allows that. It's kind of ironic that as a professional, you're not really supposed to enjoy it because it's your profession, but being present and enjoying it more is probably going to help you perform better. Did you take that those lessons into the races this year, kind of what you learned from last year and your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I look back throughout my career, which arguably has been pretty sporadic. I've had lots of successes, but interspersed with lots of injuries and periods of running pretty ordinarily. And I think for a long time, certainly in the early 2010s, there was always an anxiety around, what am I doing, or should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And it just was kind of this negative feedback loop that I guess just, it created a headspace which wasn't conducive to racing well, to training well. And I do firmly believe that in terms of your overall health and well-being and your injury resilience, it's about so much more than just your running training volume. Your body doesn't recognize different currencies of workload. It just knows load is load, whether that's coming from running, whether that's coming from work, whether that's coming from some psychological pressures that are in your life, or anything really. And so I think, certainly for me in the last, or probably the last 2 or 3 years, my biggest mission has been, how do I make this enjoyable and sustainable? And for me personally, I need to have a bit of balance in my life. I need to have things other than running going on, and that's very personal for me. For other people, it's very different. It's their best comes from when they're 100% completely immersed in just one activity. So I think that's a good point to make, is that there's no recipe for success for anyone. Some will be 100% all in, and others will have more success, having a little bit more balance in their life. But for me, having the balance, then I think has in general just kind of reduced my anxiety, around training and racing and just life in general. I'm certainly not perfect at it. I still something that I have to work really, really hard on. But but yeah, certainly this year, just through a few different conversations and probably through some particularly difficult challenges at the start of this year, I had no choice but to stop and slow down and just close my eyes and breathe and just put everything else aside that's going on inside my head, and just focus on my breath. And I think from that, I started to take that a little bit more to my running, to work as well. Started 6 months into a relatively new career, can be pretty stressful. But yeah, I think the point to be made here, and whether it's running, whether it's triathlon, whether it's anything in your life, I think, and what is it to be present? I mean, it's really just being in the moment. It's quieting. It's recognizing that your mind will think about things in the past, and it's recognizing that it will think about things in the future. That will always happen. And then just taking a step back from that, letting those thoughts pass through, and then just coming back to where you are. So when I'm on easy runs around places like this, it's easy. You immerse yourself in your surroundings. When I'm racing, sometimes I'm immersed in what my race goal is and the pace that I need to be running. Sometimes I'm just immersed in the person in front of me and the people around me, and making sure that I stay there or move around as I need to. Not sabotaging your effort, whether that's on the track or at work or anywhere, based on anxieties around things that have happened before or what might happen in the future. Neither of which you have any control over. You can't change the past, and you don't know what the future holds. So the only thing you can control is the present moment, and that's something I've certainly been working on a lot more this year. And as I said, I'm a relative newbie to I guess that this way of thinking, I guess, and a lot of work to do on it. But it's I've certainly found it helpful.
We're all imperfect, aren't we? And it's always a work in progress. I listened to another podcast that you went on, and you talked about how you've employed a sports psychologist. I don't know how long that's been for, but is this a lot of stuff you've learnt from him? And is this something you've been practicing with him, or a bit of a mix of yourself as well?
Yeah, it's So Bert and I have known each other for about 12 years. And look, initially I went and saw him professionally for actually some issues outside of running, and over the years, we caught up periodically, and certainly helped with some preparation and issues around anxieties with running and racing. And he was a huge part of my qualifying for my first Olympics. But over the years, we've just become really good friends, and this was another one of the great gifts of COVID was being locked down, and Skype and Zoom and FaceTime calls becoming the norm. We just we caught up one time early in lockdown last year, and we don't really, I guess there's probably not much difference between a friendly catch up and a professional catch up. We end up talking about a lot of the same stuff anyway, but we just kind of committed to doing that every fortnight, and we've kind of kept doing that all year. And Bert's one of my dearest friends, and as I said, we catch up as friends these days. But what we talk about, doesn't really change whether it's a professional or friendly call, and I like to think that I think we both get something out of spending some time with each other and absorbing each other's energy.
Well, you're certainly looking, if we looked from when you left school as a runner to from probably 2009, 10 to now, you've definitely got a more resilient freedom about your running, rather than than what you had previously, I imagine, from what you're telling us. And the fact that you could actually run as fast now as you did 10 years ago and now doing PBs is almost testament to that newfound freedom in your running and enjoyment and taking away the anxiety and the stresses that you put on yourself. Would that be something that you think has made the difference? And it's never one thing, but
Yeah.
you are running fantastic, and you're doing PBs, and when I hear you talk now, an absolute freedom in your perspective and everything that you're training and you're racing, and you've just taken away the anxiety, and I just love hearing what I'm listening to here, and it's no wonder that you're able to run now with that love and freedom that you probably lacked in the middle part of your career. With that, just talk us through that comment.
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate statement, and it's a pretty. I guess it's a. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, so it's it's certainly been an evolution in how I've approached things and lessons that I've learned along the way, and how my thought process has changed. But look, at the end of the day, I think probably condenses down to two really important lessons. Is probably one, I think, is that there's no magic formula to running well and getting fit, and we often attribute to the elites and professionals that they're doing all these 1%ers, but it's always easy to comment on the 1%ers, but it's the 99% that's the most important. And I think probably I've had at different times different levels of anxiety around, I guess, what those 1%ers are, and what do I need to be doing to get the most out of myself, when in reality, like, the most important thing is getting a certain critical amount of running in the legs, doing some training that simulate what you're going to do in a race and the challenges that you're going to face in a race, and do it at a level and an intensity in it, and that's repeatable, and that you can maintain week in, week out, month after month, year after year. And it's, probably no coincidence that, the last 12, 18 months I've probably had the most consistent run of training. I think, as I've gotten older, one of the things probably last year that that's probably helped a lot this year was having the confidence to say that, I'm a bit older now, and I probably don't recover as well as I did probably 10 years ago. So I don't run as many Ks as I used to. And I think it takes a certain amount of confidence to be able to go, I want to run faster, but I can't run as much as I used to. So I think, finding that level of training that's repeatable, that's sustainable, and that you can just do week in, week out. That's probably the most important thing that has taken a long time to kind of get right, but probably is what's helped a lot this year. And then I think the other thing is all of that. It's all good and well to find something that's physically sustainable and repeatable, but you have to enjoy it. And for me, I think the enjoyment and the reduction in kind of anxiety and things like that comes from having some balance. So I've quite enjoyed working during the last 6 months. Not to say that I'm not enjoying being at St. Moritz and having nothing to worry about other than training, but I've come to realize now that I can't do that all year long without whether it's boredom or whether it's just accumulating anxiety about, or extra time to overthink things and overanalyze things. But I've certainly found for me having a little bit more balance has made that consistency in training more possible. And then I'm not afraid to enjoy things outside of running. So I quite enjoy having a beer. I probably during lockdown drank more beer last year than I would have at any other point in my career. But lo and behold, I was still running all right and still getting fit. And I don't drink to excess. I usually only have one beer, but a few nights a week having a beer is okay. And traditionally, when you think of elite athletes and the 1%ers, and you think a lot about sacrifices that you make to be ready for training and things like that. And I think it's always a bit of a balancing act, making those sacrifices, but not at the expense of a sustainable level of enjoyment to kind of fuel yourself and fuel the mental energy that you need to actually do the training and mentally prepare for some of the races that we run.
Some unbelievably profound and grounded answers you've given over the last 20 minutes. It's really good. Switching on to a bit of a lighter note, you've had a great career. You've been to 2 Olympics. You've been Australian champion multiple times across 5K and 10K. Can you tell us something, what stands out as one of your favorite moments of your career, or a favorite race that doesn't have to be the best race you performed in? Maybe it's a favorite because of extra circumstances, or you're just really proud of the effort you put in. What stands out as a career highlight?
Look, I mean, simple ones like personal bests are always particularly special. And so I remember all of those. My 2 Zatopek wins were particularly memorable. The first one particularly just because it was kind of a bit unexpected, and it was early on in my senior career, I guess, and that was my first sort of senior Australian title. So that was certainly memorable. But probably one that really stands out, or probably 2 that stand out among all of them. First would have been my NCAA 5K outdoor title back in 2010, and that was memorable. One, because it was at Hayward Field, which is kind of like the holy grail of track and field in the world. And this was before they just built this fancy new stadium, so it was kind of the traditional Hayward Field stadium. And running in front of a packed crowd, which included my mum and dad, which was they've always been, or they've been at a lot of, or almost all of my sort of big international races. So it's always special when I've got family there. So that was one particularly memorable one. And then the other one would have been the Rio Olympic 10K, which apart from maybe a couple of small errors in the middle of the race, you always kind of think that the Olympics they only come every 4 years, and it's one day and it's one evening and it's a half-hour window where you spend your whole life trying to get everything perfect for that one moment, which is bloody hard to do. But I felt like on that day I ran just about as well as I could have. As I said, there was probably a portion early on in the race where I missed a move, which may have cost me a couple of positions, but it was pretty close to running as best I could on the biggest stage. So I was particularly proud of that. And again, for me, family's a huge part of the whole running journey. So I had my mum, dad, brother and sister-in-law, and my best friend Dan Carmody as well there. So it was very memorable. So those 2 certainly stand out.
That's some great answers. Dad, did you want to touch on anything there? Because I had another question, but
No, look, there must be thousands of races you've actually done, Dave, over your journey, and to pick out some of them, they're great stories. And you know, that's one of the things I wanted to pick up on was, every time you put a number on, you might not get the best outcome on the day. And how do you deal with that? Because, you're a competitor, you want to win, you want to do your best every day, you want to train your best every day. How do you deal with that in your own mind that, not every day is going to be a winning day?
you said before 9 out of 10 might not be. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you've already kind of answered that, in that we inherently know that that's a possibility, and I certainly do now, and having had so many crappy races and races that haven't gone well. So I think knowing that beforehand, certainly in the moment. I mean, when I ran 13:12 in Perth, 10 days later I ran 13:54 and came next to last in the Gateshead Diamond League. So I was about as far from the joy and excitement I felt in Perth as you could possibly get.
I did watch that race.
Yeah, it was a pretty horrible showing on my part, and
it was a bad night as well. Poor conditions.
Yeah, and I felt pretty rotten afterwards, and pretty despondent about it, and that's not uncommon. But I think knowing how this sport is, and that it is filled with ups and downs, and having that perspective allows you to kind of move on pretty quickly. I certainly didn't invent this. I'd heard it from other athletes, but in situations like that where you have a bad race, you kind of give yourself the hour or two afterwards, and then you put a line in the sand and say, yep, time to move on. That's kind of how I approach it. Is it's you will have races that don't go your way, and it's totally fine to feel despondent and disappointed and pissed off, but I think also it's important to be critical of yourself, and listen to Nick's actually sitting across the room, so I should be careful what I say. But I've always appreciated, particularly from him, which I probably didn't have from other coaches, is good, honest feedback after performances like that. I see in some other athletes, and I certainly recognise probably earlier on in my career, is sometimes the most important things that you need to learn and listen to are the hardest. And I can think of times where the hard truths, you probably you shut yourself down and you don't listen to them. And I've been particularly grateful for Nick, giving me an honest kick up the butt when it's been called for, and I think that was probably a good example. There's been plenty of other times in the past as well, and I think having the kind of putting the ego, being able to put the ego aside, and just listen with an open heart, pays huge dividends in the long run. So yeah.
Last couple of questions for you, because we know you've got a hectic schedule over there. You've had your session this morning. You go to the gym and double up this afternoon. Dad and I are obsessed with finding out more about elite athletes programming, because there's always slight variations that we're trying to learn from. And you mentioned before that you do 2 long runs a week as well as a threshold run on top of 2 high intensity days. So where do you fit those long runs in and the threshold around the high intensity days?
Yeah. So there's only, I guess, the way you're describing, I only have 1 high intensity day. So, and then 1 threshold day. Okay. Yep. So two,
changed that,
I guess, quality.
Dave, have you changed that? You used to do 2?
Yeah. So probably, for me, it probably changed early in 2018. where I started to do just two quality days a week. Some of MTC are still doing three a week. We just came to the realization that, it worked a bit better for me. I was probably not as resilient and as good at recovering as some of the other guys, and so my schedule tends to revolve around a Tuesday, generally interval sort of day, and for most of this year it's a track day, and then Friday's a steady 30-minute threshold run. So that's Tuesday and Friday. Wednesday I do a long run. Sunday I do a long run. They're both a bit shorter than what I used to. I used to run up to 2 hours for long runs. Now I'm generally only doing 90 to an hour 45. So this morning was 90 minutes. I think first week back at altitude, we'll see how Sunday goes, but it may just be 90 minutes as well. And then everything else in between is some hour jogs. I will do a double run on my 2 session days, so Tuesday and Friday, and every other day is just a single run, and then a couple of days either in the gym or doing some core stability work. So
that's great for us to know. Last question for the episode. And again, thanks for joining us and giving us your time. We like to ask our guests this question every time at the end, but what is a lesson that you've learned in the last 12 months that you'd like to pass on to other people?
Ooh, yeah. Look, I think the one that's been most valuable and most meaningful, and the one that's probably helped from a performance point of view is really putting in the practice and living in the present moment. It sounds really cliche. I hate saying it, but it's probably been the single biggest key to actually having some races this year that I've been proud of. It hasn't been probably a lot of those in the last sort of 3-4 years, and that's partly because I've just had other priorities in life as well. But certainly from a running and racing perspective. But that was probably born out of some other challenges I had at the start of the year, which was dealing with the death of an uncle and my best friend, and just a level of grief I hadn't experienced before, and affected me in ways that hadn't really had to deal with before. So but I guess kind of coping with that and managing with work and just managing outside of work and things like that, that kind of became the mantra, and focusing on breathing and things like that, and then I eventually realized, this might actually be useful in running as well, and it certainly has. So I actually recently, I've just last week finished a book called The Power of Now. It's an old book by Eckhart Tolle.
Totally, yeah.
It's a recurring theme, I think, in as I said, a lot of the conversations I have with my friend Bert. It's a recurring theme in a lot of books I'm reading. I've started reading this other one, which is it's a bit heavy, but it's about the Tao, which is the ancient Eastern. I don't know if you'd call it a book or a
philosophy,
selection of philosophy or whatever it is. But a lot of the messages from all these different things are the same, just a different flavour on them. And as I'm finding it's not a bad perspective to have.
Yeah, so sorry to hear about that grief you went through at the start of the year, and it shows the power of what you're saying. You're not just saying these cliches for no reason. It really got you through those periods. That's what it sounds like, and obviously helped your racing, which shows the power in some of these what you could say simple messages. But I've read that book as well, The Power of Now, and I think I can honestly remember how I used to look at the world before reading the book, and after, and it's almost like two different perspectives.
Yeah.
And when you do understand and really practice presence, I really like that lesson that you've said. So.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, look, it's not limited to running and triathlon and sports. It's I think important in any aspect of life. Any interaction you have with friends, being with friends, listening to friends, just generally is a good way to get the most out of any situation.
We always say, don't we? And I don't want to ask any more questions, but dealing with things in your life, such as grief, and you get perspective really quickly about what's important and what's not important. And do you think, looking back now, that it's important to really savor the good times, I suppose, and the good races, and really be proud of those a bit more than. And we're always trying to be better. And I could have done better today, even though I ran well. I could have done better. Do you think you get more perspective now that we've gone through a little bit of that in the last year, in your actual life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it absolutely it's important to savor that the good races, the good experience, the joys, the highs, all of those things. Certainly, if for nothing else, as you attack each new challenge, that you've got the confidence to back yourself. You've been here before, you've done this before, this and that. But yeah, you couldn't separate the value, I think, in the good races from the value that you get in the tough races. So I and in many ways the tough races and the ones that don't go your way, or the ones where you make mistakes, are probably more valuable. And I'd be the first to admit that I make the same mistakes over and over and over again. So it's I think it's one thing. Yes, you can learn from each mistake you make, but don't be too hard on yourself if you screw it up again, because you almost certainly will. And it's you really just find it. Life's just about fine tuning and I guess trying to always be better, but accepting that sometimes it doesn't always go your way, and that's okay. And it's it all contributes to that that amalgamation and fine tuning and just general improvement in your approach and how you do.
That's a great way to finish. Thanks so much, Dave, for joining us on the podcast. We took you a bit long there. Our apologies. Your coach is sitting next to you, so we don't want to anger him anymore. Not that he'd be angry, but we don't want to.
That's all right.
Do that. But thank you so much for joining us. Our listeners will absolutely love hearing your story. And if you do get picked for Tokyo, good luck. We will be backing you all the way, as will our listeners. They'll all be looking out for you if you do get selected. So good luck with it all. And again, thanks for joining us.